Hi, welcome to Euro Kickoff. The wait is almost over. The games are about to begin. Over the next 2 hours, we'll be getting you ready for Euro 2024. Our teams are on the ground in Germany.
I'm Rob Dorset at England's training base in the centre of Germany. The team are on their way here. They'll be here very, very shortly. And as soon as we see that England team bus arrive, we'll bring it to you on Euro Kickoff on Sky Sports News.
And I'm Luke Shanley and I'll be with the Scotland team throughout the Euros. We're live from their Alpine training base as they prepare for the tournament opener against Germany.
I'm Kaveh Solokol and I'm here in Munich as Germany prepares for the start of Euro 2024. I'll be live with all the stories before the big kick-off.
So we are ready to go, and with the help of European football experts Andy Brassell and Kevin Hatchard. Good evening, both. We are going to bring you a look at all the groups and the players to look out for. We start with England. They head to Germany as tournament favourites. Following them all the way through, our senior reporter Rob Dorset.
The England squad is very, very close now. They'll be here very, very shortly at Weimar Land, which is this luxurious golf and spa resort in the centre of Germany, middle of nowhere in absolute truth. We're outside the team media centre now, where you can see they've put the bunting up and the flags ready for the England team's arrival. And that squad, that England squad, is now complete. Jude Bellingham is with them, so they are at their full quota of 26. 27, actually, now that we know Tom Heaton, the goalkeeper, has joined up with the squad today to help them out with training. He won't be considered for any of the matches, by the way. But Bellingham had a week off. He's hopefully fully refreshed. The rest of the squad were given some time off over the weekend to spend with their families as well. But when they joined up at St George's Park today, they knew it was the real business beginning. That was emphasised, I'm sure, by the special royal visitor they had, His Royal Highness Prince William, the president of the Football Association, who chatted to the players, told them what his kids had told him, which is give them some advice, make sure they eat twice as much ready for these games. That was a nice moment when the Prince told them that, before they had a guard of honour and were sent on their way to the airport. Well, they've now landed in Germany and they will be here very, very shortly. He said, the Prince, that he admired the squad's togetherness, which has been so carefully fostered by the England manager Gareth Southgate, of course. They will need that in spades after a morale-sapping defeat to lowly Iceland at Wembley on Friday night. But as I say, they know that this training camp is where it really starts. They know the tournament proper is where it matters, and that first game against Serbia is now just 5 days away. The squad will arrive here at Weimar Land very, very shortly. As soon as we see that shiny new England team bus for the first time in this tournament, we'll bring it to you on Sky Sports News, so don't go anywhere on Euros Kickoff. The England team is in Germany. They'll be here very, very soon at their training base, which will be their home for what they hope is the next 4 or 5 weeks.
Absolutely, thank you, Rob. Scotland are already there. They have the honour of starting the tournament on Friday. Their focus is on making history by getting out of the group. Let's go live to Luke Shanley. Good evening. You're in some spectacular surroundings in Bavaria. We'll get to that, but first of all, what's the news of the captain?
Yeah, we had a little scare earlier, Nick, that's for sure. He had to walk off at training. It was an ankle knock. It was more just contact with the ball, the way it fell, and the physios did come on to look at Andy Robertson, but I think it was just a precaution. That was the reason they wanted to go off, just to make sure, Scotland making sure that they don't get any further injuries. They are being very careful with their players. So that's what happened to the captain, a bang on the ankle, but everything okay according to John Carver. He said the captain will train tomorrow. 71 caps. He is the captain. He's the 8th most capped player for Scotland. He's so important to the team. He actually broke the record for captaining Scotland 49 times. He's done it now. He broke George Young's record from the 1950s. So he is a key player, but Scotland just making sure they weren't taking any risks today with Andy Robertson.
Luke, looking at those surroundings that you're in, you could almost taste the beer, hear the cowbells, smell the lederhosen. They've had a pretty good welcome there, haven't they?
Absolutely, yes. They had a civic reception last night, and we've all watched the footage of John McGinn dancing, doing some traditional Bavarian dancing, or at least trying to anyway, and that was great. It was great to see all the locals and the players mingling. That was fantastic. It was a great warm reception. And then today at the training base, it was an open training session, and you could see the spectacular scenery behind. But there was a plaque that was given by Steve Clarke by the mayor to Steve Clarke. The fact that Garmisch-Partenkirchen, where we are, a population of 27,500, is the official training base for Scotland. So they had that open training session, and yes, there was a bit of a worry about a couple of injuries, Andy Robertson and Lawrence Shanklin, but they should be okay. And Scotland preparing now, really getting the heads down and preparing to open this tournament against Germany on Friday.
Thank you, Luke. Back with you a little bit later in the programme. For now, let's talk to our guests, Kevin Hatchard and Andy Brassell. Nobody knows more about the teams in the Euros than these two, let me promise you, setting you up. Guys, Kevin, are you up for this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hugely exciting tournament because what you want is you want a tournament where a number of teams can win it. And I feel like that's absolutely the case. It's not just one or two at the top of things. You feel like there are a few that could cause an upset. I think the stadiums are great. I do a lot of work in Germany with the Bundesliga, and I know what the excitement's like. I was at the German embassy recently in London for an event, and the ambassador was very, very proud and very excited about what's going to unfold over the next few weeks.
Andy, the other thing that strikes me as an amateur looking in, you're the expert, is that it's hard to rule any team out of... You don't say to any team, you definitely aren't going to make it through to the next round.
No, and part of that's the format, of course, with the four best third-place qualifying teams going through as well. So some would argue it's harder to be knocked out than to stay in it in the first round. On the other hand, it does mean there won't be so many dead games as well. So that means we've got excitement guaranteed. I think in terms of keeping that momentum going and keeping the vibe going, as Kevin was saying, what Germany's really hoping for as a host nation is something like they got in 2006 with the World Cup, an improvement in their self-image. There's been a bit of a disconnect between the national team and the general public in recent years. They need to do something to fix that. So in that first game in Munich, Scotland have obviously got a great opportunity to spoil the party, but Germany don't just need a win, they need a statement performance to get people on side. And of course, if the host nation does well, it lifts the whole tournament.
Yeah, Scotland will have something to say about that from the other point of view. What about the challenges, broadly speaking, facing Scotland and England?
Well, if you start with Scotland, it is a really tough group, but I think Andy's absolutely right. The opportunity is to really set the tone in that opening game, because Germany, even though they have incredibly talented players, are a flawed team. We've seen that in recent major tournaments. Didn't get out of the group at the World Cup in 2018, didn't get out of the group in Qatar either, and were beaten by England at the last Euros. So there is an opportunity for Scotland, because if Germany don't start that game in Munich well, then there will be a bit of anxiety, because it's only fairly recently that Germany and Julian Nagelsmann, their coach, have been able to win over the German public, because I would say ahead of that March international break when they played France and the Netherlands, there was real trepidation about how this could go. Because they won both of those games, suddenly the mood is very different.
And what about England, Andy? There's been a sort of temptation to assume that England are going to breeze through the group, but you can look at that in a different way.
Yeah, I guess the little quibbles over the squad are an issue, but I think that's something that will matter less once the tournament actually starts. They've got a real opportunity, I think, in this opener against Serbia. Serbia, who are a side full of good players who often don't perform to their potential. The other side of that is there's goal power in the Serbia team, especially with Vlahovic, Aleksandar Mitrovic, who everyone knows, and Sergej Milinkovic-Savic from midfield. But that means that Serbia don't necessarily have to play well to get a result. So England are going to need to be on their toes from the very beginning. And I think they'll rise to that challenge.
We'll look at England and Scotland in detail a bit later in the programme. What about the teams that we maybe don't know that much about, your Georgias, your Albanias?
Well, I think you look at Georgia, for example, this is a huge achievement for them to actually make the finals. So you know, you don't want to be patronising about it, but they've done incredibly well to get this far. But they don't want to just stop at that. They obviously want to go further. They have a star player that some people will know already in Kvicha Kvaratskhelia, who's a winger for Napoli. He was instrumental in them winning the Serie A title last season, depending on whether you think it's this season or last season.
12 months ago.
But he is absolutely the talisman for that team. So I think what you will get is you will get some sides that have one or two really notable players. The key is going to be the architecture around them. How do the rest of the guys do their job to allow guys like Kvaratskhelia to shine?
We'll get to all the groups in detail over the course of the next 2 hours. The other unusual thing is that the transfer window opens on the same day the tournament opens. So there's clubs watching very closely, agents watching very closely, players extra incentives.
Yeah, there are, Nick. And I guess the biggest domino has already fallen with Kylian Mbappe wanting to get that transfer to Real Madrid over the line so he can just think about the European Championship. I mean, he said in his press conference before their friendly against Luxembourg last Tuesday, so the day after he signed for Real Madrid, that he felt relieved. You always think of him as cool as a cucumber. So I think it's a bit disingenuous sometimes to say that players can completely disassociate their minds from what's going on. Ideally, I think those that could be on the move would like it all sorted before the tournament's happening. On the other hand, there will be a few stars that pop up and make people really take notice when they show they can do it on the biggest stage. And of course, there are a lot of clubs out there who don't exactly know how much money they've got in the pot and maybe won't do until a little bit later in the summer.
Who are you thinking might be in the shop window big time in the Euros?
I think there are some strikers are always players that grab the headlines, and you think of somebody like Benjamin Šeško for Slovenia, and he's a guy that has a relatively, I say relatively, low release clause. RB Leipzig would love to keep him, but there are clubs like Arsenal, other Premier League clubs that are being linked. If he bides his time, then other options might open up for him because he has the potential of being their star player, really.
But that's where the timing comes into it. You were talking about the timing, about the transfer window opening on the day that the tournament starts. Now, Šeško's release clause, for example, is only valid to the end of June. So if he has a good group stage, you're like, right, well, we've got to get on with it now. It's a little bit like when another player came from RB Leipzig to the Premier League last summer when Dominik Szoboszlai went on the last day of the validity of his clause to Liverpool. So especially if people are watching the pennies and pounds, maybe they've got decisions to make while the tournament's still in full flow.
Maybe Šeško will score against England. We shall see. Much more from Andy and Kevin over the next couple of hours. Right now, the Allianz Arena in Munich is peaceful. On Friday, it'll be the focal point for that opening game between Germany and Scotland. Our senior reporter, Kaveh Solokol, is there. We're with him live next. Hello again, you're watching Euro Kickoff, 4 days from the start of the tournament in Germany. Expert comment from Andy Brassell and Kevin Hatchard coming up in a couple of minutes. Lots of stories coming out of the tournament. Let's pick up some of those with our chief reporter, Kaveh Solokol, who is live in Munich. How up for this is the German nation?
Good question. We arrived here in Munich yesterday, and there is not much football fever around at the moment, but we are still 4 days away from the big kickoff. I haven't really seen any football shirts at all here so far. One thing I have seen a lot of, though, is AC/DC T-shirts, because AC/DC are in town. They played at the Olympic Stadium last night. They're playing again on Wednesday night. So most of the people here are more excited about AC/DC than the Euros kicking off on Friday. But I'm sure as we get closer to the big kickoff on Friday, and as more and more Scotland fans arrive here, we will really feel the sense that something big is about to start.
What's being laid on for fans of Scotland and everybody else who is turning up without a ticket? In the case of Scotland, that's going to be lots of them.
Yes. I mean, look, if you're a football fan, if you're a European football fan, this promises to be a really exceptional tournament because, you know, the past few major tournaments, we had the World Cup in Russia in 2018, very difficult for supporters to get to that. Then we had the Euros in 2021, which was spread all across Europe, so you didn't really get that sense of the tournament being in one country. And of course, the last World Cup was in Qatar. Again, not very many fans from Europe went to that tournament. So this, I think, is going to be like a real old-fashioned football tournament. Everybody knows how crazy Germans are about football. Everybody knows the vibrant fan culture that exists here. The 10 cities that are hosting the games here all have big stadiums. 9 of the stadiums were used at the World Cup in 2006. The only new venue is Düsseldorf. And I think even if Germany don't do well, I've got a sneaky feeling they might do quite well, actually. Even if they don't do well, I still think this is going to be a fantastic festival of football.
We'll get an inside view from Kevin Hatchard, who is a German football expert, about how well Germany might do in a little while. If you look at the coaches who've been in charge of their teams longest at these Euros, Didier Deschamps wins the battle for France, but second is Gareth Southgate, but not for the first time at a tournament. His future is a little bit uncertain.
Yes, it is. I mean, Gareth Southgate has been the England manager now for 8 years. I mean, it's a big job. It's a job that takes a lot out of you. Overall, you would have to say that he's done a very good job. England almost won the Euros. They got to the semi-final of the World Cup. Last time round in Qatar, they were knocked out in the quarter-finals by France. You really get the sense, though, that this time it could be the final tournament for Gareth Southgate. His England contract runs out at the end of the year. We know that he feels he's got unfinished business at club level. We also know that he would like to manage abroad one day. So whatever happens to England, if they go on and win this tournament or if they're knocked out, I think Gareth Southgate's future is going to be a focus of debate. But for the time being, he's been very, very clear. He said, I'm focusing 100% on England. I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm not talking to anybody else. And any other clubs who've approached him or approached his representatives have basically been told Gareth is unwilling to engage at the moment. His mind is fully set on England. So as far as his future is concerned, let's wait and see after England are knocked out or win this tournament.
I mentioned to Andy and Kevin that the transfer window opens on the same day the tournament opens. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing if you don't like transfers. You know, there's a lot of football supporters who don't really like transfers, feel that the whole transfer industry has become too big. There's so much of it around social media 24/7. if you don't like transfers, I think it's good news because the focus is going to be on the football. And it's not just the Euros, there's also the Copa America at the same time. So all these players, European players and South American players, during the tournament, their countries are going to be telling them, once you're with us, once you're in camp, forget all about transfers. We're not going to have agents swarming around our training grounds. We're not going to have transfer speculation distracting us. So if you don't like transfers, good news, put your feet up, enjoy the Euros. If you do like transfers, I'm sure there'll still be a lot of stuff going on social media, but I don't think there will be that much actually going on because so many of the best players in Europe and in South America are playing in the Euros and the Copa America.
Carvey, if you've got any bird seed in your back pocket, you can make a lot of feathered friends just behind you. Thanks for joining us. Much more from Carvey as the tournament goes on. Yeah, there they are. Thank you, Carvey. Let's talk some more to Andy Brassell and Kevin Hatchard. The tournament was 8 teams as recently as 1992, Andy Brassell, and it's grown and grown. Good or bad?
Good, I think. And that may go slightly against the fact that we evidently play too much football at the moment, and maybe the Club World Cup in 2025 will prove the tipping point for that. Clearly, Carlo Ancelotti had something to say about it and then maybe rethought how it looked publicly. But I think Euro 96 was really a turning point for this tournament, where it expands to 16, where you get other teams who are not traditional big hitters in the tournaments making a difference. So Turkey making their first appearance at a major international tournament, a very well-supported football nation, of course, where people are fanatical about the game. The Czech Republic going far in it. That's the first major tournament where Croatia really make a dent. And from there, you see why it's made bigger. So on one hand, there has to be, I think, a lid on exactly how much football is being played, because it's not great for the players, it's not great for the public if they're paying to see through their subscriptions and going to games, like perhaps tired players and players not at their absolute best all the time. But I think for this, it shows the importance of international football. And so many key points in the Euros since then have been teams emerging to really plant their flag in the tournament. You know, you can think of Greece, you can even think of Albania winning their first game at a major tournament in 2016. You know, it's not just about the biggest teams, it's a really European thing.
Of course, there are more countries in Europe than there were in 1992.
Yeah.
Just a fact of geopolitics, or whatever the word is. Let's not get into that sort of thing. We're now in the same scale that the World Cup used to be. 51 games and all. There is no, thank God, there is no third place playoff, unlike the World Cup. Just for those who haven't quite focused on this yet, just fill us in on how the whole thing works.
Well, in terms of... So this is where it's slightly unwieldy, and I would prefer 32, personally, instead of the 24. But what you will get is the top 2 from each group go through. But obviously that doesn't work for a last 16. That only leaves you with 12. So you've got 6 groups. Top 2 will go through as of right. And then the best 4 runners-up, the third place teams, rather, will fill out that last 16. This is where I think it is slightly asymmetrical, and I would like to see 32. I think you could have that quite easily. But I take the point that Andy makes about player burnout and player fatigue, because I think there comes a point where, and it chimes with what you said, really, if you look at how successful the Nations League has been, why has that been successful? Because you do have emerging nations who are going up that ladder, who are getting better, who are getting experience of winning games, being competitive, gaining confidence. And so that bedrock is there. So I think you could get to 32 teams for the Euros and it not be a situation where you have lots of poor quality teams involved.
And you have more jeopardy, is the point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just think there is something unsatisfactory about some groups have 3 go through, some groups don't.
And it's quite hard. If you are a France or an Italy or a Spain, or maybe an England, it's quite hard not to qualify.
I suppose that's one way of looking at it. I suppose you could also argue that you don't want too many of the big ones to fall at the first hurdle. I think we're looking at commercial versus sporting, really, here, aren't we? Because, of course, we always think about Portugal in 2016, who had a few bumps along the way, particularly in that opening game against Iceland, ended up with 3 points in the group and finish third in the group and end up being champions, which is very, very unusual, but something that we're becoming used to.
That's the beauty of it. The bookies, and I checked this because some people have been assuming that England are favourites here because it's in England. They're the favourites in Germany as well. I checked again this afternoon, despite the performance and the result against Iceland. Should England be favourites?
I think there's always going to be a certain amount of patriotic betting that goes on that pushes them
but they're
to the
favourites
top
in
of the
Germany
market.
as well.
Yeah. Look, I think they have enough quality to win it. Gareth Southgate, I think, has done an excellent job in the sense that he's created an environment where the fear of playing for England has been removed, largely. I think you go back to that famous defeat against Iceland, and that, more than any defeat, I think, underlined what it had become to play for England, which was a really weighty thing that some players simply couldn't deal with. They had top-class players, couldn't play a 10-yard pass because of that fear of what could happen if they lost. So him changing that whole dynamic, that whole environment, is the most valuable thing he has done. What he's also done is consistently put England in a position where they can win a major tournament. So they got to the semis of that World Cup, lost to Croatia, got to the final of the Euros. That's, if there's a stick to beat him with, it's that. The in-game management in that final against Italy let him down, let England down, I would say. And then against France, I thought they were the better team, but, came out second best. But you always felt England were contenders. And that's what you have to... You look at France, we rave about France, rightly, but they've only won one tournament under Deschamps, which was that World Cup in 2018. But time and time again, he's put them in a position where they can win a major tournament.
That throws up lots of questions and lots for Andy to get into as well. We'll do that a little bit later in Euro Kickoff. But next, we'll analyse the chances of England ending 58 years of hurt as we look at their Group C fixtures in detail. Hello again, this is Euro Kickoff on Sky Sports News. Now, when we talk about England in this competition, it's pretty much essential to mention the magical summer of 1996. Our guests have already done so. Well, that run to the semis was part of what England captain Tony Adams called the best professional experience of his career. But at the same time, he was deep in the grip of alcoholism. He's been speaking to Chris Reedy about his personal memories of 96 and his hopes for an England victory this time.
Euro 96, obviously got the Euros coming up, but for you, Euro 96, was football a safe space for you at that time in terms of what you were going through in your personal life, and what are your memories of that tournament in general?
It was the worst and the best time of my life. You know, I had huge problems off the pitch, and an amazing tournament on the pitch. And very proudest moment in my life, leading my country out at Wembley. I love the Arsenal as well, but there's nothing like leading your country out at Wembley. Home tournament, you know, I'll never forget that. It's just a wonderful, wonderful memory. So to have that and still having this kind of illness of addiction within me, and then come the August 16th, getting clean and sober and changing my life again for the better. And then Arsenal coming in September, it's just like, you know, I started the year putting my first wife into rehab, and I ended the year, you know, playing free. You know, just this complete and utter turned it on in my whole life, inside and out. But that tournament will always remain very, very special.
I watched the highlights yesterday. And I didn't realise how many amazing chances you had to win the game. If you closed your eyes and thought, what's the biggest memory or the thing you see from that semi-final? What's your overarching strong memory from that game, from the semi-final?
You know, I wasn't. I think I played well. The first thing that comes to mind is Ince, Paul Ince, to be honest with you, because I more or less went man for man with Muller at the time, you know, and he was like running off of Ince, and I'm like, my God, what's going on? Because if you do remember, Gary Neville wasn't playing, so I had Gareth along. We were playing a 3, but it was kind of a bit lopsided because Terry had played fullbacks and that come in. It's a bit technical, but that's what comes to mind. And we were doing rotation, but we took them on, and we were the far better team, and we had chance after chance after chance. A bit disappointing in the goal. I think Piercy should have come a bit round, but we won't, you know, hold it against him because he was a fantastic football player. And I thought, come in here. But sometimes you get that when fullbacks are not used to coming that close, because we played a 3, and I always had conversations with Terry, and Terry always said, "Oh, Tom, should I play the back 4? Should I have done it?" I went, No. We, for me, you know, going back to '88, my first tournament with England, and then playing in '96, you know, when we were completely outclassed by the Dutch and stuff, and in '96, you know, we completely outclassed the Dutch. You know, it's supposed to be total football. You know, we were completely knocking it about and proving to everybody that we sometimes have a bad reflection of our own. And I think we got some credit for that. People like Teddy Sheringham and Shearer and Gazza and, you know, Darren Anton, we could play, you know, we can play. And Terry just allowed that, you know, with the Christmas tree and the rotation that he did, you know. I used to pop out there and he used to pop back there, you know what I mean? It was like Poppins, I've been calling it. Mary Poppins, you should call it. Platty and Darren Anton done it on the right, and Steve McManaman and Gazza did it on the left. They'd kind of swapping, and you had Teddy and here swapping with Alan Shearer, you know. You talk about Man City today, we were doing it in '96 during the tournament, and to actually get up the Dutch team and going, what's going on? Look at these, they're outplaying us. And then into the semi, we outplayed the Germans as well, you know. We're the better team, we're the best team in the tournament. But it's fine, when it's a cup competition, it's very difficult. You know, even going through into '98, you know, full penalties again, you know, penalties again.
And it could come down that for this England squad as well, but can and should they win it?
They've got great talent. I think defensively I've got concerns for some reason. I don't know what he's going to go with, but I'm thinking, you know, would he play it like City do and get John Stones popping in, you know? Gareth's got some stuff to work on there, you know. You've got Declan in there, which is good, and then we've got an array of talents. Phil Foden, you know, Palmer came on, and, you know, you've got Harry Kane, you've got a fantastic. The problem is, Gareth, for the last tournaments, for the last 3 tournaments that he's taken us to, I think the expectations have not been there. But I think people are looking at us at the moment, and for you to say, you kind of, do you think we can win it? I'm saying, yeah, we've got a fantastic squad here. We've got a fantastic squad. So that's my one fear, that the expectations of the English public again will go up and up and up, and the boys might feel the pressure. They might just feel the pressure, and he's got a couple of big decisions to make in regarding captaincy and defensively. I think if Gareth gets those right, does a bit like Arteta and decides on his defence early and goes and plays it, or he keeps everyone happy, a Pep Guardiola kind of magician, I think England's got every chance of winning it. Then you need that little bit of luck, because if you're still the best team like we were in the 96, small margins.
Tony Adams with Sky's Chris Reedy, and this is what England have in front of them over the first phase, the group phase. They're going to try and make the last 16. Across this side of the studio with me, Andy Brassell, Kevin Hatchard. Let's pick up, Andy, that point that Tony Adams is making about too much expectation on England. Is the fact that England didn't play very well and lost against Iceland on Friday actually not a bad thing?
Yeah, I think to let a bit of air out the tyres at this stage is fine. But we think that a lot of the other contenders have been going through that as well. Portugal lost at home to Croatia at the weekend. France couldn't even score past Canada last night. So
Germany, held by Ukraine, just beat Greece.
Yeah, that's right. And they were poor in both of those games, to be honest, or certainly below expectation. So I think these games are about getting some sort of togetherness in the squad, getting some minutes in the legs, and don't get injured. You don't want to be Ozan Kabak, for example, of course, formerly of Liverpool, tore his ACL away at Italy for Turkey last week. And whenever a player goes down in one of these games, you've got your heart in your mouth. And, I think to just actually make sure you're there when it starts on Sunday is the most important thing.
So, just to remind ourselves, this is how England begin against Serbia on Sunday after Slovenia, Denmark. Second game is against Denmark, 5 o'clock kickoff on June the 20th, and then on the 25th, England against Slovenia, by which time they hope they are already qualified for the next phase. Let's talk about how they could qualify. There are 2 possible routes. First of all, if they go through as group winners, I'll show you how that looks. Kevin Hatchard, that is who they might play in Gelsenkirchen on June the 30th if they win the group.
Yeah, and I think they offer different challenges. You look at Austria, for example. They're a difficult team to deal with when you've got the ball and they're pressing you the way that Ralf Rangnick operates. He wants to get in the face of the opposition. He's completely transformed the way that Austria play. Romania, it would be quite a big surprise. I think they've done well to even get to this phase. It wasn't necessarily expected that they would get to this stage.
We've based our third-place teams on the current FIFA rankings, which may or may not be helpful.
Yeah. So, you look at some of those teams, you could get a dangerous side. But if you're going to win it, you've got to beat the best teams, right? That's the whole thing. So I don't think England will fear anybody at this competition. And that's absolutely right, because they have world-class players, certainly in the attacking areas. It's a very front-loaded team, England, no doubt about that. But you look at this group, and it is certainly a winnable group. There are dangers in all 3 teams they will face, but England would be strong favourites against all of them. OK. Now, obviously, England could finish third, but if they go through as runners-up from this group, we'll show you this scenario. Andy Brassell, how do you fancy this option? They'd then go to Dortmund and they might play Germany.
You know what? I think that actually looks a nicer route. I know people will think Germany, host nation, in Dortmund, that's going to be tough. I think it's very, very difficult to know what to expect of Germany because, of course, they're still a work in progress. They've been wildly inconsistent over the last couple of years as well. Not too sure about Spain either. And the Netherlands, it's not a vintage Netherlands side, even though they do probably have the strongest defence of all the contenders. And an England-France final would bring the two favourites together. So that would be pretty interesting. But England can't start making these calculations. I think that's the bottom line, especially with the fact that, you know, as we saw, based on the FIFA rankings, you had like the third place teams, possible third place teams. That makes it so difficult to work out your route. I think normally at a World Cup, you can start plotting it out on your wall chart now. You can't do this with these Euros.
If you'd been Gareth Southgate and given the choice of who you wanted out of these three opponents to play first, would you be happy with Serbia?
No, I don't think I would, actually, because Andy's already alluded to it. They're a front-loaded team as well. You look at the quality that they have in attack. Mitrovic has been scoring bucket loads of goals for Al Hilal in Saudi, so we know that he's a real danger. Dusan Tadic has been playing for a Fenerbahce team that put 99 points on the board in the Turkish Super League and didn't manage to win the league. And Vlahovic scored a winning goal in a Coppa Italia final for Juventus against Atalanta. So they're a team that if they were to click, and your first game's always a bit of a tricky one, that's not the game I would have picked, I don't think. Denmark is a little bit different in terms of a challenge because they are experienced, they are solid, but they don't have a lot of forwards in form. Rasmus Højlund's been in and out of Manchester United. He's had some injury problems. Jonas Vind, who can be a dangerous player, has had a really bad season, I think, at Wolfsburg. Started well, and it all faded away for him.
What do we expect from Christian Eriksen now? Wednesday is the anniversary of his collapse on the pitch at the last Euros. Has he got it in him to deliver one more great tournament?
He did score a brilliant goal recently. He's got the quality still. He still has that ability to score goals, make goals, but there is this big debate about not just him, actually, but that kind of experienced group in general. Has Kasper Hjulmand, the coach, who's generally been quite popular, has he moved that group on quickly enough? Has he embraced some of the younger guys they've got? The problem is, guys like Jesper Lindstrom, he's kind of stalled at Napoli. Damsgaard hasn't really kicked on a step at Brentford. So some of those guys you want to come through haven't really done it yet.
And then, Andy, the last game against Slovenia, these games are played simultaneously, as always, so that there's no advantage to playing first or last, knowing what the opponents have done in the group. We mentioned Benjamin Šeško, big fella, being watched all around Europe, and definitely a danger.
Yeah, he is. And, of course, an opportunity to put himself in the shop window a few days before the closure of that clause, less than a week before the closure of that clause. Obviously, people will be looking at him already. I think the fact that he can be a target man yet bring others into play, of course, because he was at Red Bull Salzburg beforehand, he gets the Erling Haaland comparison, which is a little bit unfair. But I think if you look at them at the same age, he's maybe not quite as eye-catching as Erling Haaland. His all-round game is much better than Haaland's was at the same stage when he was goals and nothing else. And, you know, we still get him sort of drifting from the game when he's not in the penalty box, even in the Premier League now. I think the interesting thing, of course, a lot of people will be looking at Jan Oblak, the goalkeeper who's been brilliant for Atletico and one of the best goalkeepers in the world for very many years now. The interesting one is Josip Ilicic coming back into the team. Now, after COVID, he left Italy, he left Atalanta, where he'd been excellent. He's this sort of Chris Waddle figure, all sort of unathletic-looking left foot, but produces absolute magic. And he suffered quite badly from depression, went home, scored his first goal for the national team for 4 years the other week. 36 years old now, so probably punch off the bench for them. But the level of technique he's got could give them a little something. I think they'll want to play England in the last game, because if they're going to make a dash for that third place, they will hope that England win those first two games and then maybe rest a few.
One word each, England's position in the group will be?
Top.
OK, that's good news. Let's show you England in the last hour or two. These pictures just in. Boarding the plane for Germany. They flew out of Birmingham Airport. Our team is at the other end, awaiting the arrival of Harry Kane and co, and you'll see that here on Euro Kickoff. Hatchard and Andy Brassell bringing their Euro experience to our Euro kickoff on Sky Sports News as we focus on Group B, Andy, and looking at Spain, Italy, Croatia, with all due respect to Albania, feels like a group that's pretty certain for the third place team to qualify.
Maybe. I think what Albania can do is really interesting here, because I think they'll be the fittest team in this group. Yeah, I mean, Silvino, the former Arsenal left-back, and Manchester City, of course, absolute fitness fanatic. He said after his team qualified, and they did so brilliantly to qualify for a second European Championship in 3 attempts. They were brilliant in qualifying, beating Poland out the way, for example, and getting Fernando Santos, the former Euro-winning coach, sacked. He said in the friendlies back in March, if you're not fit enough, you won't be playing for me. I don't care about qualification now. You've got to really produce it going forward. He's left some big players out of his squad. And I think what Albania can do in this group is they can spoil it for someone else. Maybe it'll be difficult for them to qualify, even in third place, though they do have European Championship experience from before, and they have a decent defence, I would say, as well. But I think you look at Spain and Italy, they're unknowns to a certain extent, despite having dominated in the last Euros. I wonder if Croatia are the favourites for this group. What do you reckon?
They've got the experience. I mean, they've still got that incredible midfield together. They've still got, Brozovic, Modric, Kovacic has come on leaps and bounds over the last few years. Again, the question with them is always where are the goals going to come from? But Andre Kramaric finished the season very well with Hoffenheim. Ante Budimir scored a winning goal recently. They've got different types of forwards.
Yeah, close to becoming La Liga top scorer as well, just behind Bellingham and Sorloth and Dovbyk. And
you look at Joško Gvardiol, who is really growing in confidence as this rampaging left back, whereas we knew him as typical Pep to completely change things. We knew he could play there, but he was very much a centre-back for RB Leipzig. And
now he's Croatian Stuart Pearce.
Yes.
Give me 30 seconds on Italy. How different are they to the team that won last time out?
They are different. There's a lot of experience gone out the building, if you like. No Bonucci, no Chiellini. So that's different. Ciro Immobile, not selected. I wonder how much of it hangs on players like Federico Chiesa, who's never really quite recaptured the form that he showed at the last Euros. Injury a part of that. Luciano Spalletti's not been with the group for that long. So I do have my doubts about them, if I'm honest.
And Spain?
I don't really fancy Spain at this tournament. Luis de la Fuente, the former under-21 coach who took over from Luis Enrique, not the same quality of coach. Although, of course, you have seen that he's made Spain a little bit younger. And I think if you look at Spain, you might think they're lacking experience, they're lacking personality. Those young players are absolutely fantastic. You think the players you most want to watch, Lamine Yamal, 16 years old. Yeah. And there's no doubt that he's going to be starting there. Okay. But I just do wonder if they're a little bit unpredictable.
Group winner?
Croatia.
Group winner?
Spain.
OK, we kick off with Spain against Croatia and Italy against Albania in Group B. In Group C, England on their way to their training base in Germany. The fans are ready. You'll see them arrive on Sky Sports News. Hi, good evening. Welcome to Euro Kickoff Hour 2. How many famous moments will come out of the next few weeks? 24 teams about to play 51 matches across the coming month, and it promises to be very special. It's been a long road to Germany for the teams who had to qualify. They're all hoping that path takes them all the way to Berlin for the final on July the 14th. We'll be looking at the groups and trying to identify who's going to do well and who isn't. Scotland have had a scare around their captain today. We'll be back to their Alpine training base for the latest news. And we'll continue looking in detail at all the contenders. Can Belgium finally deliver on their potential, or has their time passed? Well, Gareth Southgate and his England squad have been travelling to Germany today. They flew from Birmingham, they have landed, and they're headed for Rob Dorset. Where are they now, Rob?
Nick, they're very, very close. We've been tracking them. We've got our flight tracker that's been out looking at the England team and exactly where they are. As you say, they took off from Birmingham Airport around 3:30. This says that they landed at Erfurt Airport at about 5:20 UK time. So they're in the country. They're now on the England team bus. They're now heading this way. And when they get here, they've got quite a scene that they will see. We've told you about the high security here, haven't we? And we told you what a luxurious 3-golf course spa resort this is at Weimar Land. You can see the golf course over there. Harry Kane will be loving that when he sees it. It's in absolutely immaculate condition. Tough course, very hilly, you have to say. Will Gareth Southgate let him and the players give it a go? And if so, how often? If you pan a bit further round, look, you can see some of the local kids have come out to say hello, and there are 1 or 2 players that are, of course, amongst the favourites. Look at the big sign out there ready to welcome the newly crowned Real Madrid Champions League winner, Jude Bellingham. They'll be desperately hoping to try and get an autograph with him as the bus passes. I think they'll do well, but they'll certainly see him on board that bus, and we hope we do as well. And then just behind me, you can see the England bunting and the start of that luxurious hotel. The security gets tighter and tighter the further you go down there. You won't be able to get anywhere near it once the team are inside this camp. But they're en route. I think they'll like what they see when they get here. Remember, this is the most exclusive football-based resort in the whole of the country. It's where Germany normally stay before all of their matches. They were here up until 2 days ago. So the FA have had a quick turnaround after the Germans have left to try and get their bunting in, personalise all those bedrooms as they always do for the players, and get it ready for the team arrival. But all eyes will be on that wood. Let's take you back round and show you, because when you come to me next, we think in about half an hour's time, maybe a bit less, the team bus will come through those woods and we will see the England team bus on German soil for the first time. Go nowhere on Euro Kickoff, because the England team are very, very close now.
Back with you for that, Rob. Thanks very much indeed. In the meantime, let's get to Scotland, who have the honour of kicking off the tournament on Friday against Germany in Munich. John Carver has been at Steve Clarke's side as the team made it through to their second successive finals. And before they headed to Germany, he sat down with Luke Shanley and said he can't wait to take on one of the giants of the game.
There's been a huge improvement in the last 3 or 4 games from them. Since Tony Kroos came back into the team, come out of retirement. So it's going to be a difficult game, but what we have to do is on that night, we have to stay calm. And trying to forget about the razzmatazz that's going to go with it, because there's going to be all sorts going on before the game, on the pitch and what have you, the build-up and the hype, and hopefully we can deal with that. You know, we have players, and we talked about this, and I know Steve spoke about this, we have players who have gained so much international experience, so we've got a group of players now who have got many, many caps. So I'm thinking, and I'm hoping, whenever the pressure's been on, they've delivered, other than really the Ukrainian game, which was an extreme circumstance. But when the pressure's been on, these guys have delivered. So, you know, we're looking forward to see how they handle the occasion, the challenge, you know. But we do have an awful lot of experience in there.
Hate to say it, but Scotland have never got out of a group before at a major tournament. What gives you the belief that this Scotland team can do it?
What we have to do is, and I don't care who you are as a manager or a coach, you need a little bit of fortune, you need a little bit of luck leading into the competition. Once the competition starts, you know, then it's down to the 3 games and making sure that we're equipped. And
we might have a slightly different approach than we did the previous Euros because we've had that experience. So, and I'm talking about the staff as well as the players. So we know what we have to do. We know what it would take to get out of the group. It would be amazing if we could. I mean, nobody's done it yet. And everybody loves trying to create a little bit of history. We'd love to be able to do that. Because you go down in folklore, and we say that to the players. If you can create some history and get out of the group, you know, you'll never be forgotten. So we know what's at stake. We know what our approach is going to be. But like I say, we need a little bit of luck leading into it.
When you're an international manager or coach and you have players for a limited number of time, how much is it you have to empower them? You have to put your belief and faith in them that they will handle the pressure and they have the mentality.
The biggest thing, if I had to describe it, the word trust. You have to trust your players, and the players have to trust the manager and the coaching staff. And I think that's the one thing that we've got in this group, that both sides trust each other. And, you know, we believe in what they're doing, they believe what we give them. And I think that's important. So when you have that, you have players who will run an extra mile for you. You have staff who will do extra things above and beyond their normal roles. And that's what we've created and generated in the national team.
John Carver with Sky's Luke Shanley. Luke, good evening. Is Carver's belief a symbol of how the Scotland squad is feeling as a whole?
Well, I think there's a determination this time around, Nick, because at the last Euros they were delighted to get there, and against Czech Republic at times in their first game they had plenty of chances, they just weren't clinical enough and conceded some sloppy goals. And then against England, despite the first 20-25 minutes where England could have had a goal or two, after that Scotland dominated the midfield and created some chances themselves, might have won it. Yes, against Croatia it was a bridge too far for Scotland, but I think there's now a determination, now that they're back at the Euros, is to really make their mark, and that is the difference. They want to make their mark, and you look at the amount of caps now in that Scotland squad, the experience they have. Andrew Robertson, 71 caps. John McGinn is in the mid-60s. Cal McGregor, 60 caps. So there's much more experience now, and they've had that last Euros under their belt. Now they want to go and make their mark here in Germany.
And there is a determination to actually get out of the group, do better than other Scotland teams have done. Does the format this time help?
It could do, yes, because potentially third place would be enough, but I could give you a sob story about Scotland trying to get out of group stages. 1974, 1978, 1982, they missed out on goal difference. Euro 96, they missed out on goals scored. So Scotland have got close on many occasions, but it wasn't to be. So can they do it this time? I think they'll feel that, yes, Germany will be a tough one, the hosts, the opening game, and as John Carver said, all the razzmatazz that comes with that. But against Hungary and Switzerland, I think for Scotland, on their day, they can beat those two teams. But I think Hungary and Switzerland will also be saying the same about Scotland. So I think for Scotland, they need to try and get a positive performance. You look at their form just now, it's not great. I think it's just one win in their last 9 games. That was against Gibraltar last Monday in a friendly. But it's only one defeat in their last 8 competitive matches. That was in Seville in the qualification section, and they were unlucky because VAR ruled out a goal from Scott McTominay. Scotland could have taken the lead that day. And you look at the qualification, they won their first 5 games, including a game against Spain at Hampden Park. If they can get back to that form and that belief, you just never know.
Absolutely. Luke, thanks very much indeed. Fingers crossed. So this is the task ahead of Scotland after that opening game against Germany. Second match is against Switzerland, an 8 o'clock kickoff on June the 19th. And then on June the 23rd, they end against Hungary. Kevin Hatchard and Andy Brassell are with me, European football experts. Kevin, what about the point that Scotland, a lot of those same players have got the experience now of playing at the major finals?
Yeah, I think that's important. I think it'll be important in that opening game as well, because Scotland need to take advantage of any nervousness there is at all from Germany, because they haven't been consistent under Julian Nagelsmann. They've had some great performances, but also some slow starts in games. And if Scotland can make an impression in that first game, that could set up the whole tournament for them. This is a really tough group. There are no easy games in this group, but equally, teams will look at Scotland. This is a team that beat Spain. This is a team that went to Oslo, looked as though they were going to lose that game against Norway, but dug deep and found a way to win. Got those 2 late goals, and that completely transformed their qualification campaign. They've got guys like John McGinn, experienced Premier League players who've shown that they can perform at international level. Scott McTominay, regular goal scorer in the qualifiers. So, yes, losing Lyndon Dykes is a big blow, but they do have goals from midfield as well.
And they got Lawrence Shankland, who got an absolute hatful of goals at domestic level last season. Just picking up on the point that Kevin was making, Andy, if we assume that Germany are the favourites, if you're Julian Nagelsmann and you're looking at the other 3 group opponents, Scotland, Hungary and Switzerland, where do you rank Scotland as a danger in that group?
I think Hungary are the one that I'm most concerned about if I'm Nagelsmann, because they gave Germany a bit of scare going back to Euro 2020 in Munich, of course, nearly beat them there in the final group game. And that was a moment that gave Hungary lots of belief. From there, they were able to go on, do well, beat England in the Nations League, go through an unbeaten qualifying campaign. Of course, the fact that they have Dominik Szoboszlai as their captain and talisman this time. He wasn't fit for Euro 2020 3 years ago. So I think they've got a coach in Marco Rossi who has been there ages, knows them very well. They're a pretty good team. I just wonder if Scotland or Switzerland are favourites for that 3rd place. I think the Swiss probably have the better players, but they've had a rocky old qualification campaign. You've got this uneasy piece between Murat Yakin, the coach, and Granit Xhaka, who, having had such a brilliant season for Leverkusen, is obviously a higher status personality at the moment, and people listen when he talks. So I think what Scotland would really benefit from is a winner in that Hungary-Switzerland game. Okay. Because if that happens, then I think 3rd place starts to open up for them a little bit.
What do you think between Hungary and Switzerland, Kevin?
I think I agree with Andy. I think you look at Hungary, there are some big ifs there. If Dominik Szoboszlai stays fit, he is the talisman, no doubt about it. He had an uneven season with Liverpool, but did a lot of good things. He's making up for lost time after missing those Euros. But if he catches fire, he can really put his stamp on the tournament. There's another player called Roland Shalai as well, who's had a good season with Freiburg and has been a good player for them for quite some time. And he's very unpredictable. He can score overhead kicks. He can score amazing goals from nowhere. So I think Hungary maybe have a bit more firepower, actually, than Switzerland do. So I'm with Andy. I'd maybe put Hungary just above Switzerland. But it is a really tough group. And Germany have got to be careful. If they're slightly off it, they could be staring down the barrel at some stage in this group.
Hungary have also got Callum Styles of Barnsley, which is a great story, thanks to something that was written in the Barnsley match programme. Yeah, that's right. It's an extraordinary story. I think he deliberately put it out there. I don't think he really expected anyone would pick it up. But I guess there's someone who was reading the Barnsley programme out there in Budapest. And, he's got 20, 25 caps now. So it's an amazing story for him. And I think you look at other players like Loic Nego, for example, who went through the various age group stages with France, then went out to play his club football in Hungary, got naturalised, got his passport, and was a really key player for them in Euro 2020. And with the athleticism he's got and his ability to get into the box, he'll be a key player for them again. Gentlemen, thank you for now. Next, we're going to take an in-depth look at Group D as Real Madrid's Kylian Mbappe prepares to take on the Netherlands, Poland and Austria. Welcome back to Euro Kickoff. We're about to continue our look around the groups, but first let's get a word from Gus Poyet on who might win. The former Chelsea midfielder coached Greece in their qualifying group, so he's had a chance to see some of the front runners up close. Here he is with our senior reporter Tim Thornton.
The European Championship's coming up then this summer. You've had a close look at a couple of the sides because you were in the same group as France and the Netherlands. So how would you rate their chances?
France is, for me, with England, and maybe you will be surprised, I will put Portugal in there, the main contender. I think they're going to be, between the three, is going to be the next European champion. Then I don't know what to expect from Germany. I mean, in terms of potential, they got everything, and they play at home, but, you know, it's so difficult to see Germany now. I think for England, it has to be the time. You know, I think everybody in football and everyone who plays in the Premier League and know the potential of the national team of England, it's time for England to be in a position to win it. And I think they got everything to be able to win it this time.
Jude Bellingham, his impact at Real Madrid and his potential impact on this tournament.
I don't remember a player making such of impact in one of the biggest teams in the world ever. The players that were going to Real Madrid, they were ready a high level. I'm not saying that Jude Bellingham was not there, but he was getting better. But everybody was expecting a period of adaptation. No, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's a pleasure to watch.
Can he become the best player in the world?
There is a place. I mean, everybody's talking about Mbappé for sure, because with Messi and Ronaldo going down slowly, everybody was expecting Mbappé to be the next one, or after last season, the previous season of Haaland. But careful, because Bellingham is there.
Great to see that smile. Gus Poyet with Sky's Tim Thornton. A look at Group D next, just to say that England, we expect, are going to arrive at their base in Germany in the next few minutes. We'll be live there as soon as that happens. But Kevin Hatchard and Andy Brassell are still with me. What a great group this is. Poland against the Netherlands on the first day and Austria against France. Kevin, it's one where you look at the group and you think there's no game there, maybe France, Poland, but it's hard, not many games where you'd say, yep, convincing favourite there.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, Gus Poyet talking there, he knows all about the Netherlands because he faced them as Greece coach and pushed them really hard as well. It was a late Virgil van Dijk penalty that won that game, but Greece could have easily won that game. So the Netherlands, there are question marks, but defensively, they have all the tools that you need. You know, Virgil van Dijk, we know, Nathan Ake, Matthias de Ligt, who's had some injury problems with Bayern. Poland, I think, may struggle. They obviously edged out Wales. They needed the playoff to get there. They have one of the world's best strikers still in Robert Lewandowski. They have a great goalkeeper in Wojciech Szczęsny. But I think there are problems in that team. That Austria-France game is fascinating to me because Austria are all about energy without the ball and the high press. Can they catch France out if France are a little bit sloppy in possession? So that's a really fascinating one for me. France, I think, are the favourites for the whole tournament, but there are some potential traps there as well.
What do you think of France? Where are they? Where are they at?
Well, what you talked about before, Nick, about was an advantage almost to England to deflate expectation a little bit by losing that game against Iceland. Not only do I think is France having that goalless draw with Canada helpful in deflating expectation a little bit, they had a really good bit of learning from there. And Didier Deschamps said it himself after the game, don't play Antoine Griezmann as a second striker. He looked like one of the best players in the world in the last World Cup when they played him in midfield. They can't do without him in midfield. Now, whatever the combination of midfielders they have elsewhere, and there are fitness doubts over Tchouaméni, over Rabiot, N'Golo Kante has come back in and looked the part, so he'll probably start as well. They know that they have to do that, and they know that it really benefits the team as well. And I think when you look at that first game against Austria, that's where they really need Griezmann. This is the sort of game that he could really manipulate, even though Austria have been in incredible form, winning, 11 of their last 14 and 6 wins in a row up until that draw at the weekend against the Swiss.
Does Deschamps know his best team?
Not necessarily, but he knows Griezmann's in it. And he knows Mbappe's in it. I think there are... squad depth is not a bad thing to have.
England are arriving. Sorry to interrupt you. I knew this might happen. Delighted to say that we can go live to Germany and Rob Dawson.
Yeah, look, we've just seen the police outriders arrive here. These are ahead of the England team bus. If we pan across to the left, you'll be able to see one of the police vans that's escorted the England team bus from the airport at Erfurt, which is about 20 miles down the road from here, about 40-minute drive. So any second now, we should be seeing that England team bus arrive around the corner. And when we do, you will see the England team bus for the first time on German soil, just to remind you of their schedule that they've had so far. So the schedule was that they had a visit from the Prince of Wales, who is, of course, president of the FA, earlier this morning. He gave them a little chat. And the most memorable thing that stood out for me was when he said he'd spoken to his kids that morning and said, "What shall I tell the England players?" And they said to him, "Make sure they eat twice as much as they normally do, double the amount." So he passed that on to the England squad, and there was a bit of a show, as there always is when the team leaves St George's Park for a major finals. They light some of the staff at St George's Park, of which there are a lot, line the roads inside St George's Park and wave and applaud for them as they head off. They then went to Birmingham Airport and flew pretty quickly over to Erfurt, and we didn't know whether they were coming directly to this very small airport at Erfurt, which is close to where ourselves and the rest of the English media are camped, as I say, about 20 miles outside of where we are now. And they landed, we think, at 18 minutes past 5 UK time this evening, got on board that England team bus, which they'll get very familiar with over the coming days and weeks, and headed here towards Weimar land, which is this luxury golf resort. 3 golf courses, a spa, of course, indoor swimming pool, and all of the training facilities where we will see England train for the next few weeks as well. And they will arrive here. I've gone too early, haven't I? I've gone too early, Nick. That's what I've done. The police outriders arrived and we got all excited. So the bus isn't with them as we speak to you right now. Look, do you know what? I could talk for hours, but it probably makes sense to go back to your guests in the studio, and as soon as we see that bus arrive from that woods, come straight back to me, because England are imminent, I promise you.
Rob, I'm going to stick with you for one more question. I'm going to gamble. Maybe I've gone too early as well. But just if I'm looking at a map of Germany, whereabouts are you?
Right, so we're pretty much slap bang in the middle and slightly to the east in terms of the huge country that is Germany. And the reason England picked this base is because partly of its location. It will not take them as long as other teams to get to the various games they've got. In fact, the first game against Serbia in Gelsenkirchen is probably the furthest that they will go. It's about 175 miles. 4 hours by car. I'm pretty sure England will fly there, in truth, because they won't want an 8-hour round trip for their first game, even though UEFA is trying to encourage the teams to fly as little as possible with internal domestic flights in this competition. So, yeah, that's why they picked it so centrally, but it's a long way from any major German city where we are now. It's very rural, it's very isolated. You can see that the trees and the woods behind me, very tight security as well. So don't expect England fans to come here. Don't expect many of the locals to come here, because they've got a journey to get here, and they'll be pretty disappointed when they did arrive here, because I don't think they're going to get to see much of the players. In fact, while we're waiting for the bus, let's just pan across to the right a little bit. And I mentioned the hotel itself to you earlier on. That is well down that hill over there, and you can see some of the locals that have arrived to come and see the England team arrive. But in terms of the hotel itself, top security, luxurious, down the bottom of that hill beyond those buildings you were just looking at. So from a Gareth Southgate perspective, absolutely ideal location. The players and the staff will see it for the first time in the next few minutes. Nick, as soon as that bus arrives, come back to me. OK, we'll do that. Let's pick up on Group D with Andy Brassell and Kevin Hatchard. What about Austria then? Ralf Rangnick could have had a number of other jobs, but he's staying with Austria. Who wants to kick off on Ralf Rangnick?
I think the interesting thing about Ralf Rangnick is everyone will remember him from Manchester United. Now, there's not a lot of staff or players that particularly come out of Old Trafford with their reputations enhanced anymore. I think it was always a bit of a strange appointment because, of course, he's had mainly sporting director roles rather than coaching roles in recent years. I wonder, Kevin, if international management suits him a little bit more, because he's someone who's always taken that widescreen view, hasn't he? And you've seen that kind of leadership from him with Austria.
Yeah, I think he sees Austria as a bit of a fixer-upper. I think he realised that he could change their approach he could change the football.
Pause just for a second. This time, I think Rob Dawson hasn't gone too early. This is for real, Rob, the England bus.
I'm going to get out of the way, have a look at the England bus as it arrives on German soil for the first time and heads towards what will be the England team base for what they hope will be the next 4 or 5 weeks. We've waited for them, we've tracked them. These are the first pictures you will see of the fully branded England team England team bus rather, which the players will get to know very, very well over the coming days and weeks. It will be that bus that ferries them to their media duties when they get to talk to the likes of me on a daily basis, and of course to those games, where the first one is Serbia on Sunday evening, 8 p.m. kickoff UK time. They've gone pretty quickly past all the waving crowds and the locals that have come up to say hello to them, and they're disappearing off behind the bunting there and down that hill. And it's still quite a distance down there before you get to this luxury spa golf resort, you have to say. But I know that those England players will be very, very impressed with it. England and the FA always do a fantastic job in terms of the facilities, in terms of the training bases. They personalise all of the bedrooms for the players, so there'll be pictures of their families when they get in there. There'll be their favourite pillows. There'll be an awful lot of things that remind them of home to try and give them every minute advantage when it comes to the football matches themselves. No excuses from the England players' point of view. The FA goes to every level to get them the best facilities and make them feel absolutely at home. So there you go. We waited a long time for that, and it didn't take very long in the end when they were actually here, did it? The England bus has steamed into Weimar land, this luxury resort in the middle, slap bang in the middle of Germany, and the England team are on German soil. They will be making themselves acquainted over the next few minutes or so. We will see them for the first time tomorrow, an hour-long open training session, which is due to start at 4 o'clock local time, 3 p.m. UK time. We'll get to talk to some of the players for the first time there as well. They've got some media duties, so stay with us on Sky Sports News. We are all over this European Championships. The England team are now in their official base.
Excellent, Rob Dawson. Thanks very much indeed. Live from the airport region, we will complete our look at Poland, Netherlands, Austria and France in a few minutes, and also Group F with Cristiano Ronaldo preparing for another major tournament. Well, if you gave up waiting and went out for a quick pint, here is the England team bus. Could have been a pint of tea. Arriving at their training base, their luxury training base in Germany, where they will hope to launch a bid to win Euro 2024. They start against Serbia on Sunday evening. We went straight there to see the bus arrive, and you were in the middle, Kevin Hatchard, of talking about whether Didier Deschamps knows his best team for France to kick off in Group D against Austria.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is he's got options everywhere. We know Mike Maignan is the senior goalkeeper, so we know that's locked down. We know players like Mbappe and Griezmann are as well. But there are questions. We think Marcus Thuram will get the nod ahead of Olivier Giroud at the top of the pitch, because Thuram maybe has that greater mobility, had a brilliant season alongside Lautaro Martinez for Inter as they ran away with the Scudetto. The centre-back area is quite interesting as well, because he's been very slow to trust William Saliba, even though we know how well he's done for Arsenal in the Premier League. But Deschamps has said quite openly, there are things he does I don't like. So it's taken him a while to convince him, and he's gone more for guys like Diogo Upamecano, who's been a lot more up and down in his club form, but is somebody Deschamps has worked with, has worked well with, and has trusted in the past. OK, let me get each of you to give me your 1, 2, 3, 4 in this very interesting and open-looking group. I'll go for France to win it, Netherlands second, but only just, Austria to snatch the third, and Poland to be bottom. Andy?
France, Austria, Netherlands, Poland. Although I think the thing that really works for Poland and why they could make it difficult for others, Lewandowski has been in much more like himself sort of form in the second half of the season. Keep an eye out for Sebastian Szymanski in midfield as well from Fenerbahce. Good season he's had. OK, let's have a look at Group E, which is Ukraine, Slovakia, Belgium and Romania. Romania-Ukraine is the opening game, June the 17th at 2 o'clock, which is a week today. Belgium, golden generation, time running out, discuss. I've never been totally sold on the golden generation thing with Belgium, because I think you could never have said there is the best team in Europe or there is the best team in the world. They've had some exceptional players, they still do. Romelu Lukaku was the top scorer in qualifying. Kevin De Bruyne is Kevin De Bruyne, so, you know, if he stays fit, he can dictate games, no doubt about that. I think there are worries defensively. And Thibaut Courtois won't be there because he had a falling out with the coach Domenico Tedesco about a captaincy issue. He wanted to be captain for a specific game, wasn't given that. There was a big falling out about that. Also, of course, he came back for the Champions League final, was brilliant for Real Madrid against Borussia Dortmund, but has missed almost the whole season with an ACL injury. So I think Belgium can still do something, especially in this group. But again, I wouldn't say they're one of the favourites here by any stretch. How do you rate Ukraine, Andy? Quite highly. I mean, I think if you look at it on a human level, that they came within a whisker of qualifying for the 2022 World Cup and have now qualified for this. And they did it the hard way as well. They nearly knocked Italy into the playoffs, but had to go through the playoffs themselves in the end. That they've done that whilst being under a full-scale invasion by Russia is extraordinary. They'll have lots of people supporting them in the way that Denmark, because of the Ericsson incident, has supporting them last time. But I think when you try and work out how they've done it, they've got that stability from the very top now, with Andrei Shevchenko being the president of the FA, with Sergei Reborov, his old strike partner, coming in as coach. But just look at the players. It's a really, really, really good generation of Ukrainian players. Mikhailo Mudrik's best mate, Georgi Sudakov, who's been brilliant in the Champions League for Shakhtar this year. He's one to watch. Artem Dovbyk, the top scorer in La Liga. He's got his sidekick from Girona, Viktor Sigankov, with him. You know, there's quality throughout this team. And those old faithfuls that we think of, so Yarmolenko, Ruslan Malinovsky, they can't even get in the 11 anymore. So the way you've been talking, I'm looking at Slovakia against Romania as a battle for third place on the final day. Yeah, it could be. I think Romania are interesting because they didn't necessarily expect to qualify, weren't even... I mean, they topped their qualifying group, so they did well, but they had some games where they weren't complete performances, let's say. And the big question mark over Romania is things like Radu Dragushin's been warming Tottenham's bench, hasn't played enough, but is a key player for them in defence.
Yanis Hadji started to play a bit more for Alaves towards the end of the season on loan from Rangers. Nikolai
So are they super fresh or are they undercooked?
Well, this is the thing that runs throughout the tournament. You know, players who haven't been necessarily playing regularly for their clubs, are they fresh or are they rusty? And we'll see that as the tournament goes on. And I just wonder with Romania, are they a bit too reliant on Nikolai Stanciu, who is a great player on his day, isn't playing at a particularly high level at club level? So that's a concern. Slovakia, I think it's good for them that Martin Dubravka, the Newcastle goalkeeper, has had a lot of game time this season. Wouldn't necessarily have expected it, but he got it. They've got a lot of experience in midfield. Guys like Juraj Kucka, Andre Duda. So they've got that solid base. I thought they looked quite sharp against Wales the other night. I thought Bojanek in attack, some good movement from him. They're going to need that because the big question for them, and Romania really, where are the goals coming from?
Yeah, we've heard lots from Kevin on Group E. So for Group F, let's start with Andy Brassell. Here are the fixtures for Group F, and there might be an advantage, which we'll come to, on being in Group F. We start, though, June the 18th, Turkey, Georgia and Portugal, Czech Republic, and one footballer stands out in this group, obviously.
I guess so, although I think one of the key points of Roberto Martinez's Portugal tenure so far is that the Cristiano Ronaldo question is not just suffocating everything else that Portugal do. It's clear that he's very nice to have still scoring goals in the Saudi Pro League, of course. They will use him. He won't start all the games, I don't think. And this team is no longer Cristiano Ronaldo's team. It's probably Bruno Fernandes' team. But they've got quality all over the pitch. And it's interesting to hear Martinez talk recently about, yes, Ronaldo and Pepe are in the squad, but you need that experience in the dressing room. So no guarantees for them in terms of them being starters. You know, you look at a centre-back partnership that might be made up of Ruben Diaz and Antonio Silva of Benfica or Gonzalo Inácio of Sporting. They've got quality all over the pitch. They've got a much better goalkeeper now in Diogo Costa. And a little bit like France, a few of the things that they did in not quite getting there in World Cup 22 have left them in a much better position for this tournament.
They start against the Czech Republic. We know Thomas Souček very well. Who else should we look out for in the Czechs?
Well, Patrick Schick did really well at the last Euros.
Scotland will remember.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's had a really interesting season because he started the campaign injured, so missed a big chunk of it. Victor Boniface was scoring lots of goals for Leverkusen in his absence. But then he came back. Schick started scoring goals in cup competitions. Boniface got injured and then Schick came back in. So he's got that sharpness. He's got some goals behind him. It's been part of this incredible Bayer Leverkusen season. So he should have that nice little sweet spot between not being overplayed but not being completely rusty. So he's the key man for them, really. In the opening game, Turkey we're used to seeing in these stages. Georgia, we're not.
Yeah, and of course there will be a lot of pressure at home on Turkey because it's a football mad nation. They've got a really good coach in Vincenzo Montella, who's not an overseas coach who's just been parachuted into a random job. He managed in the Turkish Super League before. He did pretty well. He handled some big personalities like Mario Balotelli, of course, while he was there. And the thing about Montella, a bit like when Sven-Göran Eriksson first arrived with England, he's at games all the time. He's building relationships with the clubs, with the coaches, with the players, and that's absolutely invaluable because Senor Gunyes, who's such an experienced coach and has won the Super League a couple of times with Besiktas, he didn't really show that leadership when we go back to the last Euros, and that was a huge problem for them because they look really, really disorganised. In terms of the raw talent that they've got, I'm not massively convinced this time. Even though Hakan Çalhanoğlu has had an absolutely sensational season with Inter and he'll be a big power for them, I just wonder who's going to score the goals on them because a lot really lands on the shoulders of Kenan Yildiz, the teenager who's looked good for Juventus, but he's still a teenager.
And they will have lots of support because lots of
so much
Turkish heritage people in Germany. Georgia have one standout star, but not only one man who can play.
Yeah, Kvicha Kvaratskhelia is the key to the whole thing. Kvaradona, as he was called in Naples when he helped them win the Scudetto. And he plays a slightly different role. He plays that more central role for Georgia than he would do for Napoli. But he has a player in great form in front of him, in George Mikotadze, who has been scoring goals for Metz after it didn't quite work out at Ajax initially. And so they do have players that can do some damage. And I think it's going to be about that supporting cast playing their roles as they did against Greece in that playoff, because that was a real slog. They had to really dig deep to do it. But the goalkeeper, Mamardashvili, has been brilliant for Valencia for a long time now. So you need a good goalkeeper. They've got some of the raw ingredients, but it's a big test.
I think that's the interesting thing. There are not many well-kept secrets in European football nowadays. But as you say, Nick, a lot of people will be a little bit blindsided by Georgia. And if you're looking at players who might get big moves off the back of this tournament, I think Mikhatadze and Mamardashvili are two really good candidates.
OK, stand by for the moment we've been waiting for, the bit we record their predictions for who's actually going to win Euro 2024, as all roads lead to the final in Berlin in a month's time. Coming up to the last 10 minutes or so of Euro kickoff with European football experts Andy Brassell and Kevin Hatchard, and your chance to tell us exactly what's going to happen. If those who like a bet, make a note. If you don't, that's fine. Opening match, Scotland-Germany. Could go really badly for Scotland, obviously, but it might not.
No, it might not. I mean, this is a Germany team that is heading into this tournament with a lot of question marks still. And you start with the goalkeeper. Manuel Neuer made another error in the win over Greece, and they spared his blushes eventually. But this is a guy that was out for the best part of a year. He admits himself having had that really serious leg injury that only 1 or 2 people out of 10 make a full recovery.
Not their best goalkeeper now?
Well, there's an argument to say Marc-Andre ter Stegen is the top goalkeeper. He certainly would believe that. He was amazing for Barcelona when they won La Liga under Xavi. He was outstanding that season. Maybe has dipped a little bit since then. So there's a big question about that, but Julian Nagelsmann has shut that down and said, Neuer's my number 1. There are question marks over, can they take enough chances? Because we saw in the World Cup under Hansi Flick in Qatar, made loads of chances, didn't take enough of them. So who's going to start at centre-forward? Will it be Niklas Füllkrug? Will it be Kai Havertz? Havertz probably links better with the likes of Florian Wirtz and Jamal Musiala, but Füllkrug is a proven goal scorer and is a bit more of a bully up top who can do a bit more against the centre-backs.
So if you're a Scotland fan, you needn't be too downbeat about the prospect.
No, I think there's an opportunity, but you've got to start well. You can't let Toni Kroos start to dictate the game, because I think if Germany settle in, then it's really, really tough. But if Scotland start well, maybe get the first goal, different story.
Where do you see Scotland finishing in the group?
4th.
Fair enough.
I think so too, but...
If they've got something to aim at, it's Switzerland, I think.
OK, we'll see. That might fire some Scottish viewers up, and indeed Scotland squad, if you're watching in Germany. Good evening to Garmisch-Partenkirchen. What about England's opening game then against Serbia? How dangerous a game is that?
I think Serbia are dangerous in that, as I said, they can hurt you without dominating the game. I mean, you look at them at Sweden at the weekend, and it's a far from exceptional Sweden at the moment, rebuilding under Jon Dahl Tomasson, of course, after he came across from Blackburn. But they've just got that degree of attacking quality. We talked about Vlahovic, we talked about Mitrovic, of course, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic can score from all sorts of ways from midfield as well, and that's before we get to Dusan Tadic, for example, who will probably come off the bench. I think there are a few things to watch for England. I would expect England to win this. I think a big part of it is they're just that little bit more athletic. But I think here, from the Serbia side, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, not his goalkeeper brother, Vanja, he is the key, because this is the point. We talked about how much players will have left in the tank. He's been playing at a level below where he really is in the Saudi Pro League. So maybe he's a little bit fresh.
How big a figure has Jude Bellingham become for England, partly by not being involved in the 2 games last week, but also what he's done for Real Madrid?
I think a huge figure. I think you look at the way that he has continued that trajectory after leaving Borussia Dortmund. It would have been very easy to be a little bit daunted by playing for Real Madrid. He's done the total opposite. He's absolutely embraced it. He's learnt the language, which I do think is very important. Obviously, he's not completely fluent, but he's giving interviews in Spanish, which I think is really important. It's a signal that he's willing to work, if that makes sense. So it's not just about working on his...
It conveys respect, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I think it shows somebody with a keen intellect, but also a keen work ethic. And he is somebody that's happy to take on a leadership role at the age of 20.
He's got it in him, has he, to be player of the tournament?
Oh, 100%.
Comfortably.
100%. Because the only question I would have about Jude Bellingham, and this is not anything that's his fault, there is a doubt over, has he played too much? So I would go back to his final season at Dortmund. He takes so much on, and he becomes the central figure of that Dortmund team, but he can't play in their final game against Mainz because he'd been carrying an injury and didn't quite make it. That's not his fault, of course. But the temptation is, has he been overplayed, and is he too central a figure for everyone he plays for? That would be my only question. Mentally, technically, he can deal with it.
I think how the other teams play him is really important to look at, because in the second half of the La Liga season, really targeted by opposition teams, trying to kick him, trying to wind him up, trying to stop him playing. And that is part of getting towards being in the conversation for being the best player in the world, isn't it?
Some quick predictions. He could be player of the tournament. Who else might be, very quickly?
If Germany do well, Florian Wirtz would be a runner.
OK.
Antoine Griezmann.
OK. Top scorer?
I think we're on the same page here, aren't we? Romelu Lukaku, we think, is going to rack up a few goals in the group stage. And if he does well in a knockout game, that might be enough. Yeah,
it is about the group opponents, isn't it, for people going for Lukaku. So your semi-finalists?
Oh, now
They're looking at each other.
There's a question. I can tell you, I think my finalists would be, I think France and Portugal.
Yep.
I think France are slated to, if they both win their groups, face England in the semis.
Yep.
So I could absolutely see that being a kind of repeat of that showdown at the World Cup, although that was at an earlier stage.
Yeah, I've France as my winners, and that would be an extraordinary final. It would be so much better than the 2016 final.
Winners for you?
France.
Gentlemen, Andy, Kevin, thanks very much indeed for being with us on Euro Kickoff. And we've got more from the England camp next.